Picture the last time you saw oil spots on your driveway. You probably did what every responsible car owner does. You drove to a shop, pointed at the stain under your engine, and waited for the diagnosis. 45 seconds under the hood, a clipboard, a number between $600 and $2,000. Valve cover gasket, cam seal, rear main, pick your poison. You paid it, or you drove away feeling guilty. Either way, you accepted the premise without question. The seal broke, the seal must be replaced. Write the check. That premise is wrong. I have spent 19 years under Japanese engines, Toyota, Honda, Subaru, Lexus, and I am telling you directly that the foundational belief most drivers carry about oil leaks is built on a misdiagnosis so common, it might as well be an industry tradition. The seal did not fail. You were never told what actually killed it, and that ignorance has been worth billions to dealership service departments who benefit every single time you confuse a maintenance problem with a mechanical one. 3 months ago, a woman parked a 2008 Camry in my lot. 2 shops had already quoted her $800 to $1,200 for a valve cover gasket replacement. She had not paid either one. I asked her one question. No service advisor at those shops had bothered with. When did you last change your oil, and what weight is in there right now? She did not know. Nobody had ever connected those 2 facts to the puddle forming under her engine. I walked her through a seal conditioning protocol I picked up from a mechanic in Osaka years ago. No parts replaced, no valve cover removed. 2 weeks later, she sent me a photograph of her engine bay, bone dry. That is not a miracle. That is what happens when you treat the actual disease instead of billing for the symptom. Here is the part that should make you uncomfortable. When Toyota and Honda engineers design a crankshaft seal or a rubber gasket, they design it to live inside a very specific chemical environment. Clean synthetic oil, correct viscosity, changed on schedule. Inside that environment, the rubber stays pliable, stays slightly swollen, stays pressed tight against its mating surface. It seals perfectly for hundreds of thousands of miles. That is the engineering intent. Now think about what actually lives inside most engines on American roads. Oil that has gone acidic. Oil that lost its conditioning additives 5,000 miles ago. Oil that stopped protecting rubber the moment it crossed its service window. In that environment, seals do not wear out the way you imagine, grinding down over time like brake pads. They starve, they shrink, sometimes by as little as 2 or 3% in diameter. 2 or 3% sounds like nothing until you realize that is the entire interference. A woman drove into my lot with a 2008 Camry. 2 shops had already looked at it. Their quotes sat between $800 and $1,200 for a valve cover gasket replacement. Good instinct, because here's what those shops missed entirely. The seal had shrunk by roughly 2 to 3% of its original diameter. That is it. That is the whole failure. Not a crack, not a blowout, not a catastrophic rupture. A microscopic retreat of rubber that nobody bothered to diagnose before reaching for the parts catalog. Now run the math on what happens when you skip that diagnosis. I have personally seen cars roll into my bay with a brand new valve cover gasket, $800 already spent, still dripping oil onto the customer's driveway. The valve cover was never the source. A cam seal 2 inches away was. Nobody checked. $800 evaporated because a technician spent 45 seconds glancing under a hood instead of 30 minutes, reading a drip pattern on cardboard. The diagnostic tool that would have caught it costs literally $0 and requires 0 tools. A sheet of white cardboard. 15 to 20 minutes of driving, 30 minutes of patience. That is the entire investment. Stack those numbers side by side. On one end, you have a $50 fix, clean oil, correct viscosity, let the seal environment recover. On the other end, you have $600 to $2,000 at a dealership, or worse, the decision to sell the car entirely because the quote feels like more than the vehicle is worth. The spread between those 2 outcomes is not determined by the severity of the leak. It is determined by whether anyone asked the right question first. Here's the question nobody asks. What oil is currently in this engine, and when was it last changed? 60,000 miles of degraded oil sitting against a rubber seal does not just fail to protect that seal, it actively attacks it. The compounds break down, acidity rises, and the rubber loses plasticizer molecule by molecule. Every mile past 5,000 on conventional oil is compounding damage against a part that was engineered to last hundreds of thousands of miles. It was starved. That gap is not a rounding error. It is the entire margin most families have left at the end of a month, and it widens every single time degraded oil sits inside an engine 1 day longer than it should. Here's what nobody puts on the invoice. That $1,200 valve cover gasket replacement you just approved, the shop did not fix a manufacturing defect. They fixed a maintenance outcome that their own industry created. The gasket did not fail because rubber wears out. It failed because the oil sitting against it for the last 3,000 miles had already turned acidic. Its seal conditioning compounds long gone. its detergent package completely spent. The part was murdered slowly, and the killer was a maintenance interval designed to benefit everyone except the person writing the check. Think about who actually owns the outcome here. Toyota engineered that seal to survive hundreds of thousands of miles. They published that spec based on clean oil at correct viscosity, refreshed at reasonable intervals. Then the American service ecosystem took that engineering and stretched the interval to 10,000 miles because fewer oil changes means fewer labor hours per car, which means more cars through the bay per day. The owner gets a dashboard reminder at 10,000 miles and believes they are being responsible. They are not. By 8,000 or 9,000 miles of city driving, the synthetic oil inside that engine has become hostile to the very rubber it was formulated to protect. The detergents are depleted. The anti-wear additives have broken down. The seal conditioners that keep gaskets pliable and dimensionally correct stopped functioning thousands of miles ago. Every hour that Camry idles in traffic, those seals are drying out in real time. The owner does not know. The system does not tell them. And when the leak finally appears, the same system that caused it hands them a clipboard with a 4-figure quote. Now watch what happens when you reverse the extraction. A Japanese mechanic encountering a seeping valve cover does not reach for a gasket. The first move is a full hot drain, engine at operating temperature, oil flowing out nearly complete. Cold oil. The way American quick lube shops drain it, because speed matters more than thoroughness, leaves 10 to 15% behind. That residual film is acidic, contamination loaded, and it immediately poisons whatever fresh oil lands on top of it. A hot drain followed by a short rinse cycle with inexpensive synthetic pulls debris from every gallery and passage. What comes out looks nothing like oil. Black, particle-laden fluid that was bathing your seals every single day you thought you were on schedule. After that rinse, fresh oil at correct viscosity with a pre-filled filter goes in, and for a meaningful percentage of those slow seeps and minor weeps, that is the entire fix. No gasket, no labor bill, no parts markup. The seals were never broken. They were starving. The system just never had a financial reason to feed them. Here is what the fix actually looks like when you strip away every dramatic claim and every bold label on every bottle. It is boring. It is mechanical. It fits on an index card. And it has saved my customers collectively more money than I'm comfortable putting a number on. Pull up your oil cap in your head right now. Picture the last jug you poured in. If your odometer reads past 150,000 miles and you are still running the same 0W20 that rolled off the assembly line, you have been feeding a grown engine infant formula. The tolerances inside that block are not what they were at mile zero. They have widened naturally, predictably, the way every piece of precision metal widens after a decade of thermal cycling. The viscosity that maintained perfect film pressure against fresh seals now lets oil weep past rubber that is just slightly more relaxed than it used to be. Not failed, relaxed. The action is this. Next oil change, go up 1 grade. 1, not 2. 5W30. If you have been running 0W20, 5W40. Full synthetic if you have been on 5W30. That single bump in film pressure reduces the pressure differential, pushing oil past borderline seals. I have watched valve cover weeps on high mileage Camrys dry up completely after 1 drain and fill at the correct upgraded viscosity. No gasket pulled, just a $7 difference in the price of the jug. Now pair that with 1 additional step, and then you are done. 1 bottle of ester-based seal conditioner, not the petroleum distillate stuff that forces a rapid swell and cracks the rubber in 60 days. Ester chemistry. It penetrates degraded seal material, restores pliability, brings dimensions back close to factory spec. Lucas oil stabilizer or liqui moly oil smoke. Stop dosed exactly to the label. Exactly. More is not more protective, more is destructive. Follow the bottle, not your gut. That is the entire protocol. A viscosity bump and a measured dose of the right conditioner. 2 actions you can execute at any oil change for under $40 total. No appointment, no lift, no negotiation with a service advisor, holding a clipboard and a $1,200 quote. You're not patching anything, you're giving seals back the environment they were engineered to operate in. Clean oil at the correct pressure, with chemistry that reverses the brittleness, years of neglect baked into the rubber. I watched a woman drive away from my lot in a 2008 Camry that 2 shops wanted over $1,000 to crack open. 2 weeks after this exact protocol, bone-dry engine bay, not a single drop. They were starving, and nobody upstream had a financial reason to feed them. Now you have the reason and the method, and it cost you 1 oil change worth of attention. So here is your exit contract, stated plainly. You owe this method nothing. If you try 1 viscosity step up, run a single conditioning cycle, and your consumption does not measurably improve within 2 oil change intervals, walk away from it. You have lost the cost of 1 oil change and 1 bottle of conditioner, maybe $40 total, That is your maximum downside. You are not locked into a subscription. You are not committed to a 6-month program. You spent less than the price of a diagnostic fee at most shops, and you now own a definitive answer about whether your leak is maintenance grade or mechanical grade. Either way, you are ahead of where you started because you stopped guessing. Your Japanese engineered seals were built for hundreds of thousands of miles. They hold up their end when you hold up yours. Clean oil, correct viscosity, reasonable intervals. That is the entire agreement. No miracle.